The City of Southport Board of Aldermen meeting, September 8th, 2022, is now called to order. Welcome to all those of you who are in attendance and those who are watching virtually. For our invocation tonight, as is our tradition for September, our invocation will be by the City of Southport Fire Chief, Charles Drew. This will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Let us pray. O gracious and eternal God of heaven and earth, we humbly acknowledge Thee at this our present meeting. Help us to never forget the memory of those lost to the events of 9/11 as the anniversary approaches. For Lord, we know that they did not die in vain, and we pray with genuine and sincere hearts that their legacies would go on to endure. We think of the courageous souls this evening of Flight 93 who fought back toward the hijackers to spare lives, giving the ultimate sacrifice. We pray for the memories of those who lost their lives to rescue, help, and save others, such as firefighters, police officers, paramedics, emergency responders, the clergy, and civilians who offered a hand. May their bravery be remembered and their families and friends touched with Thy grace. And Lord, this evening we pray for the innocent victims who were killed that heartbreaking day. We thank You for the mark that they left on this earth as we celebrate the impact that they had on us as friends and family and neighbors. Help us not to lose sight with time of these souls. Help us become ever mindful that they were made in Your image and that their lives held such great value. Continue to bless our city, our leaders, our staff, and the citizens that we serve. This we ask in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chief Drew. We certainly will never forget the courage and bravery that was shown on that day. I have a few introductory comments concerning our meeting tonight. Baldhead Island Limited, East-West Partners, Indigo Plantation Phase 2. The application has been withdrawn, so this item will be removed from the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind reading the email that the letter we received?
If you would, we plan to not only do that, but what we're going to do first, we're going to have public comment, and I'm going to have Mr. Paul speak, and that letter will be read by him, and then the Board of Aldermen will be able to ask Mr. Paul any questions that they have any. So yes, that was the plan. Yes. All right, Mr. Paul.
I'll read the letter, but I was going to just excerpt comments, but I will go ahead and just read the letter as Mr. Kerr requested. The letter is written to Gordon Hargrove as city manager. RE voluntary withdrawal of zoning, PUD, and annexation applications associated with Project Indigo Phase 2. Dear Mr. Hargrove, on behalf of East-West Partners, Managers, LLC, and Baldhead Limited, we have elected to voluntarily withdraw all pending applications with the City of Southport associated with Project Indigo Phase 2, to include zoning application number RZ 21-110401, PUD application 21-1104-01, and our contingent annexation application effective September 8th, 2022. We believe voluntary withdrawal of the Project Indigo Phase 2 application this time will afford the City of Southport and the applicants the time necessary to incorporate desired amendments and changes to the applications. We look forward to meeting with the City of Southport staff and its development attorneys to seek guidance on necessary application amendments prior to resubmitting the applications. Thank you for the consideration. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact me. So, in terms of the background and the meaning of that, right now, we've heard you all, and we understand the needs of the aldermen as well as the city and the city planning department. And there is a goal to have a good and healthy discussion, a negotiation, if that's what you will. One thing that we have done throughout this 2-year-plus process is we have never said one thing or committed to one thing and gone and done another. That we haven't done, and Limited hasn't done that in 40 years on anything related to the city. And we're not going to do that here. So we are not going to resubmit an application that is the same as it was before in 30 days. We're not going to resubmit an application until we sit down and have a healthy discussion and a healthy negotiation with you all on what it's going to take to have the annexation piece work. I'm confident that there should be a happy place after that negotiation, and that's what we're committed to doing. And it really boils down to the annexation piece, which is tied to density. So from my perspective, that's where we are. We're going to put it in your hands, put it in staff's hands, and we are not going to resubmit the same application with the same things in it until we have a healthy conversation with you, and the new application that we submit will be based on those discussions and those negotiations, for the lack of a better word.
Any questions for Mr. Paul from the Board of Aldermen? Done. Okay. Mr. Paul, thank you for your letter and for your willingness to work with the city. We heard the people, you heard the people, and we're moving in a different direction, so thank you. And thank you, Board, and thank you, citizens, for being a part of this process. It's the will of the people, the input of the people, and that's very important. And that will be just as important as we move on to the next step.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, could you take a moment to just clarify the differences between the withdrawal and a no vote and the obligation of the applicant as far as timing and resubmittal? Just to put it on the record, please.
If the applicant withdraws the application, they can resubmit as soon as tomorrow. Typically, it's resubmitted within about 30 days, 60 days. It's whenever we can start those negotiations and come to an agreement of what that density looks like. If there is a no vote, the applicant has to wait 6 months unless the board has discretion to bring it back quicker than that if emergent conditions exist.
Is there any obligation of this board to negotiate with the applicant? Is there any obligation for this board to negotiate with the applicant?
What the board does with this applicant is strictly up to the board. So you can negotiate or not negotiate. That's the board's prerogative.
Madam Clerk, for us to do a policy move as far as negotiation with anybody, would that would require a public vote, would it not? Would it take a public vote?
You mean for the board to vote?
Yes.
A formal motion?
Yes.
I think you could probably do it as a motion or just a consensus, Because
But something public would have to take place for a policy decision as big as that.
I would assume so.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Mr. Alt? What part of the process are you referring to?
Well, I'm prohibited from law to discussing what happened yesterday. So the question that I have is, why are we having special negotiations with one developer and we do not have that with everybody? Why are we considering raising density levels for one developer rather than everybody?
Can I answer that? Sure. Because it's a PUD, and that's how the process works. That's the whole point of having a PUD rezoning.
Well, it's not a PUD yet because it hasn't been voted on as a PUD.
But the application is for a PUD. That's what they've. That's how PUDs work. That's how that process works. I mean, you can say, if you want to, you can say that PUD is some kind of special zoning that people get that other people don't get, but yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the whole point of having the PUD in there, is so we can, the PUD zoning, so that we can have input in association with the public to guide and mold the project into something that is acceptable. That's the whole point of it.
My point was simply that we have no obligation to negotiate with any developer. And I wanted that on the record.
Just as a point of reference, when, I can't remember, Alderman Alt, if you asked or not, or how it was phrased, but in the School of Government direction regarding development agreements, it clearly has to do with the size and scale of a project. A larger project is more likely to have a development agreement or work within that arena. That's what I read.
And I think you're correct about this. There's a size issue that would be the threshold. But quite frankly, where you pick the number of days, because whatever number I pick is going to be challenged. But I say about 250 days into this. No one in this room knows what their vested rights are. So trying to figure out the size of the project is somewhat skeptical on my part. But that's just me.
Well, we may not know exactly how many houses can be built on that piece of land under the current zoning, but we have a pretty good idea. And that number's been floated, and we were actually informed of that number yesterday, as recently as yesterday, by Mr. McLeod, who is our interim planner. So, I mean, we have a pretty good idea. To say, I think it's very disingenuous to say that we don't know what they could build under the current zoning, because we have a pretty good idea.
Well, it's within hundreds between the range, I know that.
It's 400 to 600, so, I mean, pick a number. They're not that hugely different.
And we're not even sure about that because we haven't taken it into precaution. So we don't know exactly what that number is. It could be as low as 350. It could be as high as 550. But we don't know what it is. But we know it's not 900, okay? So we have to try to figure out what the baseline is so you can start negotiations so you know where you're starting your discussion from.
Okay, well, so would you like for the city to spend $100,000 doing a prototype development plan for the site so that we know exactly how many lots could be put on it?
No, I want the developer to come in and tell me what he's got.
That doesn't make sense. What do you mean tell you what he's got?
He's
got
developing the land. He can come in and tell me his vested rights are X.
There are no vested rights. You don't even understand the concepts. It's not vested rights. He doesn't have any vested rights. It's zoned R20. You can build houses under R20 zoning.
And what is that number? That's what I'm just trying to figure out, what the
There is
baseline is.
absolutely no way possible by anybody on this planet that can give you that number unless you hire an engineer or a land planner to do a full-blown plan on all that land. It's impossible. Nobody knows that number. It can't be calculated unless you spend a lot of money.
Well,
And I think 400 to 600 is plenty good enough number to start talking with. I don't understand the problem with that. It's not like the range is somewhere between 1 and 50 billion. It's 4 to 600. I mean, it's...
Well, as we go down this road, and we hopefully will include the public in this, I'm sure these discussions will continue.
For clarification, just not to get into the substance of the discussion, what we're talking about yesterday, we had what was supposed to be a confidential meeting with our attorney.
It wasn't, I disagree with the term supposed to be. That's what it is. There are two reasons the board can go into closed session: to meet with your attorney and then to discuss a personnel issue. And in terms of, Alderman Allen, he's a former city planner, and he was a city planner for Southport, and he gave us a good discussion in that at R20 they have a range between 400 and 600 as our planner stated. So now and the public is involved. It's not allegedly involved or supposedly involved. The public will be involved again. As always, involved in everything. You're here tonight. And there's more than just indigo on our agenda. So, but now that they've withdrawn it, and it's up to them to bring something back in discussion with the city. And that's how it should work. The city gets to decide. To me, as profiles encourage, we stand up and say, this is how we want it to look. And if it can't look this way or as close to this way as possible, then we're at an impasse. But we are going to do what's right for the citizens and the city of Southport. Case closed. And as your mayor, you know that's the direction we're going to go. Every time, no matter what the issue is. So again, it's not just indigo, it's whatever comes before this board. We do what's best for the city and the citizens of Southport. And we have the input of our citizens every time. So thank you for the discussion, board. And I would like to move on to the rest of our public comment. And I do have just a slight change in our public comment. I think that because we've had, most people have been respectful and have not taken advantage of the no time limit. For right now, I think we should institute a 5-minute time limit because we've had 15-minute, 10-minute, 25-minute type comments. And I don't know if you saw the editorial in the pilot. They were very instructive. I want to I thank Terry Pope for that editorial last week. So if you need more time, call us, email us. We'll meet with you, whatever we need to do. But this is to get as many people to speak as possible. Let this part of our meeting be concise, with clarity, accuracy, and with respect. So, and when there's a public hearing, you will make your comments during that public hearing. So, and we have several of those tonight. So, for example, if you want to speak on tree preservation, then you would wait until that public hearing was declared. So anyway, thank you for that. Madam Clerk.
There are several people signed up that have downtown project listed as a subject. I'm not sure if that is the text amendment or if it is something else. The first one, from 1011 South Wind Way.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and hear those. That'll be
Okay.
fine. If they're here, please come to the podium, make sure your microphone is on. State your name and address. Yes, sir. Glad you're here.
The situation as far as downtown Southport is concerned was just brought to my attention less than a week ago. And that's probably because I don't read the pilot that often. But the situation is, it's the construction of a 3-story building, the design of the building, the occupancy of the building. Our current parking situation is at a premium. And the overrunning of that many people, that many more people in downtown Southport, will take away the charm that this town has depended on and lived by for many, many years. I'm new to Southport. I've only been here 4 years, but I fell in love with it when I came downtown. I saw the trees and I saw the older buildings that were kept immaculate, the businesses that were in there and thriving. And now we have a situation where some families want to come in and expand downtown. They want to increase the growth where there's no growth left. There's no parking left. There's no land to take care of it. And if it is allowed to happen, it's going to overflow all the neighborhoods around downtown. Everything. Moore Street, West Street, Nash. You'll see cars parked in your driveways. This just doesn't seem to be a smart idea initially. Maybe we could take it down a few steps. Limit the height of the buildings to 2 stories so it doesn't overlook backyards that depend on their privacy. Make it look like it does now, instead of a modern structure. And most of all, if you take away downtown Southport as it is now, with all the tourists that come here and enjoy the architecture, the calmness, the serenity, pretty soon you'll have rooftop bars, beer bottles, cans, drunks. I've been there. But seriously, you're going to take away everything that has made the essence of this city so charming, so wanting to be a part of. And instead, you'll just turn it into a Myrtle Beach. That's all I have to say.
Sir, if you would, please state your name and address.
My name is Carl Bliss, 1011 Soft Wind Way, Southport.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk? Thank you, sir.
I think it's Mr. Gann at 1038 Seahorse Court.
He's not going to talk. Madam Clerk, who's next?
Charles Cornett.
Okay, excellent. Good. It was very good. Protect the charm, keep the drunks, right? There we go. Erase that from the minutes, please. No. Madam Clerk.
I'm having trouble reading this name, but they signed as Smithville Woods, I believe, as the topic.
Okay. Well, welcome, Ms. Ballard.
Yeah, I know we've talked about a lot of issues here, but everybody's failed to talk about Robert Roark Drive. We already have Osprey development down there. I've seen a lot of development of traffic over 30 years. We need to think about infrastructure on the roads, number of vehicles on the roads. You put 1,000 more houses, 4 vehicles to a house, and you're going to have a lot more traffic, not counting what Osprey has. Think about hurricane preparedness. And when you go to leave, get away from the hurricane or a bad storm, how much traffic is going to be on that road? Think about speed. They have 25-mile-an-hour speed signs up, and I know myself I had to slow up when I see that sign. But nobody else seems to, and that's a problem. And I love deer. I have a lot in my backyard and my fence, and I know a lot that's been run out from Osprey. Now you're going to develop across and put a road out from Ballhead. Where are the habitat for the animals? Where's the deer going to go? And the loggerhead turtles that come across the road. Where are they going to go? I've already seen an issue with traffic, even from my driveway. I'm in the curb at the Smithfield Wood sign, 1060 Robert Roy Drive. And so far I've been lucky. But someday somebody's not going to be lucky. Is that when you're going to do something? My question is, what rights do we, the people, have? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ballard. Madam Clerk?
L. Lambert.
Welcome, Ms. Lambert.
My name is Elle Lambert, and I'm honored here tonight that I'm able to speak to you about the submitted car building proposal at 115 House Street. We are here to represent our lovely neighborhood and the devastating impact this structure and its proposed use would have on the historic district. Our property, as well as the whole section of town, are part of the original 100 parcels of property in Southport. We hope to be able to retain this historic character of the neighborhood. We are heartened by the awesome backing of our Southport friends and neighbors in our outreach for support. We have gathered over 350 signatures to date on a petition to oppose the present plans. Of the 350, only 30 signatures are from surrounding towns such as Oak Island and Boiling Spring Lake, where Southport is also their downtown for shopping, church, and leisure. These folks also wanted to be a voice in our appeal. We're here tonight to present copies of the petition to our aldermen and mayor and the city clerk. We will continue to augment this petition with new supporters and as we get the word out, and we plan to submit the original copies in blue ink to the planning board next week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Tracy Ballou.
Welcome, Tracy.
I'm Tracy Ballou. I live at 206 West Nash, and I'm just going to say a few words about the car building proposal. There are a few facts that maybe a lot of people don't know. Number one, the current proposal, the dumpsters and the grease pit storage will be right next to a residential home. Those particular items, as you well know, have a lot of smell and there's a lot of noise and with everything going on. And that's something to think of, and all of that's going to waft. This is the only project that I've seen in the central business district that butts up exactly to residential homes. I mean, we're talking, this far from homes. And going on further with the structure the way it's proposed now with the 3 stories and then the rooftop bar, all of the people who live on West Nash, both sides, will no longer have any privacy in their backyards or their homes. People are kind of worried about that. And another thing, parking, I won't even go there. They do not have to provide the parking needed for the usage of this structure with the restaurant and the bar and the retail stores because they are located in the central business district. So my question is where are all these people going to park? With the structure the way it's proposed right now, they can have wedding receptions, big parties. So that would mean anywhere from 300 to 600 people at one time. Where are all those cars going to park at once? You know, 300-400 cars? Right now, the capacity of the restaurant and bar is 435 for the restaurant bar and 227 for the rooftop bar. That's a lot of people, folks, and a lot of cars, and a lot of trash, and a lot of noise right on our streets. And it will happen on the west side and on the east side, depending on what usages go on with this structure. I'm just really disappointed in the owners that have put this proposal together because they are and have been their families Southport residents, and I would think that they would want to maintain our wonderful town's character and architecture and usage. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things to you. I know you've known a lot about it, other things that are involved, but just remember that, you know, it will never be the same, and it'll be like July 4th, 24/7, everywhere in downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Ms. Pat Kirkman?
Good evening, I'm Pat Kirkman, 119 Park Avenue, 26-year resident of City of Southport. And once again, I am here to speak to you, Aldermen, about the preservation and operation of the city cemeteries. I will direct my remarks away from mowing and raking, Mr. Stanley, even though we are grateful for the grounds crews for their efforts over the past few weeks, especially in the old cemetery. I want to bring to your attention some discoveries my research has found regarding the overall operation of cemetery ownership by the City of Southport. We have a city staff member who wears the title Superintendent of Cemeteries. He is Kylie Barefoot, and he was employed by the city in April of 2021.
You're not supposed to, the public does not address or criticize an employee or board. Your comments are directed to the board in general. So something about the cemeteries in general, get to the point. What is it? Just like we did with the cleanup, we will certainly look at your comments and try to meet those needs. But you cannot call out an employee. You can't say Alderman so-and-so. If you want to call out me, that's fine. Go ahead. But you're not an employee. We just can't do that. That's not part of public comment. This is comments to the board.
Comment to the board. Thank you, Mayor, for that instruction. My comment to the board is that there is no job description for the position of superintendent of cemeteries. This title was given to this staff member, Alderman, without his knowledge when he became an employee of the city. The other thing that I am concerned about is the record keeping of deceased people. There is missing information. Accounting of income and disbursements from burial permits, funeral home bonds is in question, but the finance department of our city is consulting with their software provider to try to work out some solutions to providing better accounting for cemetery funds. Violations of burial site regulations, especially at Northwood, are not being addressed. Offers of volunteer help have been ignored. We have in Section 5 of the city ordinances the rules and regulations for the cemeteries that are owned by the city. And if we are choosing not to enforce, and that's a strong word, but to even look at things that are happening that should not be in the cemeteries, then perhaps what you as Board of Aldermen can do, and this would be only up to you, is to change those ordinances, to amend those ordinances, and anything that is being violated, we'll just take it out of the ordinances and say it is not a rule, so therefore you may do as you please in the cemeteries. So it is not a question of just keeping the grounds in good condition. It is now becoming a question of looking at the whole operation of what's been going on with the cemeteries. So what do we need? Alderman, I'm saying to you, perhaps we need an appointed committee, an ad hoc committee, to look at the establishment of a serious cemetery commission with vetted members to help the city get the operation of the cemeteries in order. Perhaps the time has come to consider hiring a cemetery superintendent with the job description and a job to do. $59,000 was approved by you, Aldermen, for our budget, recent budget, and that was set aside to hire 4 part-time seasonal grounds workers, which has not happened so far. Perhaps it's a good salary start for a superintendent dedicated to the cemeteries. Preservation and maintenance, especially of the historic 250-year-old burying ground, reaches beyond ground maintenance. There are broken and crumbling tombstones. There are safety hazards all over the cemetery. There are many aspects to be tended to and on and off the grounds. We cannot just let this go on the way it has been going for the past quarter of a century. Southport is 230 years old.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kirk.
We have plenty of time
Thank
for
you, Ms.
preservation.
Kirkman. It's been 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, and I appreciate being able to speak to you, Alderman.
Madam Clerk,
There is no one else.
is there anyone else that would like to speak that did not sign up? Oh, okay, well, if you didn't, okay. Ms. Slaughter, Francesca Slaughter, and then, do you have another list, Madam Clerk? They said that they
Oh, I'm
had
so
signed
sorry.
up.
Yeah, there is another page.
Yes.
Most everybody has indigo written, so I'm skipping over those. I do not see Ms. Slaughter's name on here, but
I had signed up over there at the entrance.
is it on? I'm so sorry. It is on top, but it's for
Okay.
Project Indigo.
All right.
Thank you so much. I don't have any prepared statements. I'll make this very quick. My name is Francesca Slaughter, and I reside at 6243 Cottage Creek Road in Indigo Plantation. Our family, we are 16-year residents of this community. I understand that the developer has withdrawn their application for the rezoning. I would like for you all to consider, please, when round 2 comes, and I'm sure it's coming, that you would consider perhaps a referendum before you adjust any zoning that could potentially change the face of Southport so drastically that you allow a referendum and allow the people of Southport to vote. Thank you.
We'll get your answer right now.
And one of the things about it, for a zoning amendment, they're legislative actions, and I guess this feeds into something that somebody had brought up earlier. Unlike, say, a special use permit, that you are not allowed to speak outside the hearing and the board members are confined to just the evidence they get here. Traditionally, in zoning instances, because it's legislative, board members are allowed to, run, for example, for office based on a view of what zoning ought to be. So there are oftentimes, most of the time, in fact, when people are seeking zoning amendments, it's not at all unusual for there to be some give and take, lobbying, if you want to call it that, outside of board meetings where things like that are discussed. So that was one thing that came up earlier I wanted to try to sort out. That's not an unusual occurrence. There's nothing underhanded or out of the ordinary about it. When it comes to other zoning matters like that, changing the map, because it's legislative, the board members are the only people who can make that decision. They're required to, and they can't, punt it off to the public in a situation like that. Only the local governing board gets to decide what zoning will be for an area. Now, the town, your input in it really is at the ballot box. So if you have a board member, you don't agree with their view of what zoning should be, essentially your only real recourse there would be to vote them out of office, vote for somebody else. And that's a legitimate thing to do. That way everybody's doing their part in the process. So that's it. One of the other things about zoning, in case this ever comes up again, and I hope I'm not around to see this, but when you do a rezoning situation, the board, their task in that is to look at one, if you're just talking about a regular old zoning map amendment, one table of uses versus another for a rezoning in most instances. So you're not allowed really to tie the developer down and say, what are you going to do with this, in that situation before you talk about the zoning. Now, PUDs are different. They're a little bit different, but just as an example, if somebody wanted to rezone a plot of land 3 streets down from central business to R20, the board, their task would be to look at, is this parcel, is R20 more appropriate for this or central business? Not the question of, hey, what's this guy planning to do with it? And I know it's natural for people to always want to ask, what's this guy planning to do with it? But hopefully, that's provided a little bit of guidance to you about what happens in these situations. Thankfully, I just want to make it clear, I'm not at all involved with the Indigo stuff here. Mr. Paul and his companies have been a long-time client of mine, so I'm staying out of that one. But that's where we stand on the general idea on it.
What about a non-binding referendum simply for the public to express its opinion?
I mean, I don't know how mechanics-wise you do that. Just the procedure of getting that up and running, I'm not quite sure how you could do it, but I don't know that there's any prohibition on that.
Okay. Apparently, I didn't have my microphone on.
You get a pretty good idea of how the general populace feels, though, generally speaking, from meetings, but. Yeah, ordinarily you'll get a pretty good feeling of how the general populace feels about something from people who show up at meetings. It's a board issue for someone other than me.
Okay, thank you. So no referendum. Madam Clerk?
Am I correct in assuming that the Indigo speakers will not be speaking tonight?
If they have a burning issue, we're happy to have them speak, but it's not on the public hearing tonight. So, but we'll be happy to hear their comments. I don't know what new they have to say, but we'll listen. Anyone else? Just read the name, and
Okay.
If they want to speak, they can.
Anna Maria Scott.
Hey, Ms. Scott.
Good evening. My name is Anna Scott, and I reside at 6272 Cattail Court in Southport. While you might notice that I have an accent, I have been here for 37 years. Soon you will have a power to change the course of Southport forever. The citizens of Southport elected you because we felt that you will do the best, you will be the best candidate to protect and preserve our best interests and of our city. It is my hope that after many months of hearing from us regarding the proposed massive development known as Project Indigo 2, you will do the right thing and decline the developer rezoning request to create a very high-density development. There is simply nothing wrong with enforcing the current zoning, which is a lower density. While I understand a developer's desire to maximize profitability, it should never be at the expense of safety, security, and quality of life for those of us who call Southport home. That's all I have to say.
Madam Clerk.
Virginia Jordan.
Okay, Ms. Jordan. All right, thank you.
Jack Gordon.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Gordon, good to see you.
My name is Jack Gordon. My wife Eileen and I live at 5920 Dutchman Creek Road. She's more popular than I am. You may know her. We bought our lot in Indigo 1 on Dutchman Creek Road in 2003. We retired in 2004, moved here in 2005, June 2nd. A month later, we went to the Fourth of July parade. It took us 3 hours to get back to our rental place off Robert Rourke. Okay. That night, we went downtown for the fireworks, got a great parking place, set up our chairs in the park, walked down to the yacht base, and they were serving sandwiches outside. We had something to eat, back, watched the fireworks. This was our first time here, so we weren't that smart. We said, let's let the traffic clear, and we'll walk back down to the yacht base. And when we got down there, they were closed, everybody. So, okay, we lost a little time. 3 hours later, we got back to our place on Robert Rourke. Now, that was in 2005. I'm not going to talk too much about the proposal because it's going to change, but we hired Bobby Jones to build our house. We moved in right before Christmas, 2006. His son Scott, his sons John and Robbie also worked on the property. The only one who didn't was Randy. It's Randy here tonight. Everybody knows Randy. He's another Jones, one of the Jones boys. When we bought our lot, this was in August 2003. I was dressed like this, and our lot was like a forest. So we're not even going to try to walk on the lot. There's no way. We'll be eaten alive. We came back 3 months later in October, met with the ARB to find out the rules, met with the president of the POA, and walked the lot, dressed for it. It took us 15 minutes to get from the street to the back of the lot. That's how solid it was. When Bobby started to clear the land to develop, he only cleared where the driveway would be and the footprint of the house. He left everything else there for us to give him some guidance on. I've seen other buildings where the developers just come in and level everything. He didn't level anything that he didn't have to. We decided to be very careful in front. We did cut down the underbrush. We didn't touch any trees. And I guess our thought for the parking lots, when that plan started to unravel, was that they'd build homes on those parking lots just like the rest of the homes in Indigo. That would be very appropriate. That was not the plan, but I'm saying to the board, the aldermen now, that's what we envision, and that would be a good thing if they put houses in those parking lots like the houses that we have now. Low country, 100 square foot front porch, that's what we were told we had to build. We assumed the people who own property in the parking lots would join our POA. I got a feeling that won't happen. So I just wanted to mention that. I know it's been withdrawn, but it's coming back. The only other thing I'd like to say are the roads. We know there's not enough now. There certainly wasn't enough then. But there's the condition of the roads bothers me too. With all the building that could be going on, the road into Indigo, the only one into Indigo, is in real bad shape. Not as bad as a lot of the rest of the roads in town, but they all need repair, and I don't know what the plan for that is. Good job on Bay Street and House Street. Atlantic a couple of years ago and 9th Street a couple of years ago. Good job, but what about all the rest of the houses? So I hope that comes out of this too, and I've said enough. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We're working on the roads every day. We're planning to get those taken care of. Madam Clerk.
Steve and Kathy Stuck.
Okay.
Jim Gandy.
Mr. Gandy's going to pass. Okay.
Bob Brogan.
Welcome, sir.
Thank everybody for giving me the time. I'm Bob Brogan. I'm a licensed home inspector and commercial property inspector here for North Carolina, Brunswick County, Pender County, and all the surrounding areas. I live on Robert Rourke, 4011 Robert Rourke Drive. Indigo Plantation is going to back up to right to the back of my house, which I understand that. I got 680 acres of woods behind me. 2 lots down is where the cut-through is going to come through on Robert Rourke. As this young lady said earlier, Robert Rourke's already a mess with speeding, everything else around those curve areas. It's going to get worse because not only are we going to have Indigo coming through there, we're going to have the other plantation on the other side of the road coming through there with 190 houses. That little light right there at House Street and Robert Rourke is not going to be able to handle the traffic, for one. So our roads are going to be a mess. The parking's already a mess. And not only are we just looking at this, I do all of the businesses around here, all the construction areas. We have giant housing developments going up on 211, all the way down to Highway 17, all the way down to Myrtle Beach. And those people are going to come here. Don't kid yourself. We don't have the stores. We don't have the schools. And what I would also like to address, sir, I used to live in large cities all of my life, LA, Denver, you name it. With bigger populations comes crime, drugs. Are we ready to address that with our police chief here? You know, with more manpower, gangs. We don't want to be another Wilmington. Anyway, I just wanted to say my piece, but thank you very much for giving me the time.
Madam Clerk.
Lois Gandy.
Welcome, Ms. Gandy.
I'm going to make this quick. I've been up here several times already. My name is Lois Gandy. I live at 5961 Spike Rush Trail in Indigo. My thing I've been talking about and writing about and talking about is and as you see, everyone's concerned about the entrances. Well, the gentleman that just spoke on Robert Rourke. My huge concern is the entrance and exit on Indigo Plantation Drive. A little tiny street in a neighborhood that is so close to an elementary school. And I'm just begging to rethink this. Chad, Paul, all of you, I've talked to you about it, McKay. Please, please, for the safety of our children. It's already dangerous there. It's already dangerous. I can say that because I've had a horrible accident there that changed my life. It's dangerous. And I beg you to think about this. Think about the safety of us. We're scared. We're all scared. That's why we're here. Our life is changing. Our quality of life is changing. And the biggest thing is safety to kids. We have to worry that they're going to be murdered in their classrooms. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrendous to think of that. And now we have to worry about something, they're going to get hit by a car while they're getting dropped off, or a car, which happened to me, could have went through the fence, and if a child was there, this was an accident was no fault of my own, that child would have been killed. So I beg you to think about safety. And this project is huge, but think about the people involved and the children involved in this. Please, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gandy. Madam Clerk,
There is no one else at this time.
is there anyone else that is here that would like to speak?
Ms. Brown, but you're speaking about the other amendment, is that correct? The exterior lighting, there's going to be a public hearing
Yeah.
for that topic.
Yeah. Anyone that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. It's your name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Pearline Messer. I live at 5349 Dozier Cutoff, which is formerly Sacred Heart Villas, which is now Coastal Villas. It's a senior apartments with 44 apartments, who now have most of us being displaced because our rent has went up. You have seniors that are bedridden, that have nowhere to go, and we can't seem to find any way to get any help. We've searched everywhere in the area, and we're safe in Southport. So we really do like, living here. No one's concerned about being robbed. But you look around, there are no senior apartments except 2. They told us, oh, your rent won't go up for 10 years, 20 years. I've been here 5 years. Went from $665, $804, now $1,085. So, I have a next door neighbor that's 84, bedridden for a year. The wife is 86. The kids live on Oak Island, so they can take care of their parents, But if they have to move their parents to a farther distance, and then you put them into assisted living, which is really expensive. So, there are people who will either make a decision on buying their medication or getting a half a prescription to pay the rent and their lights in order to live there. I'm one of the younger residents. I'm 63. So I'm able to go out. I'm able to look around for apartments. I've been everywhere. Charlotte, you name it, I've been everywhere. And there's really nothing here for a senior. So we're being pushed into, places I found, Columbus County. I was ducking bullets on a walker in Columbus County 5 years ago. I don't want to go back and live there, but there's nowhere for us to go. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention, that how many seniors is in that complex that we don't know what to do. And we have till December 31st to move out or come up with the $1,085 for the 2-bedroom and $908 for the 1-bedroom. But thank you for listening. Have a good night.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak that's here that's not going to speak at the public hearing on their topic? Okay, great. Thank you. Excellent discussion. Next, I will read the ethics statement. If any members know of any conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest, concerning matters on the agenda, please so state at this time. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Board. Item E is the approval of the agenda, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the omission of the item concerning public hearing on Indigo Plantation Phase 2. Motion by Mr. Lombardi. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item F, approval of the consent agenda. And on our consent agenda, we have the regular board meeting minutes from August 9th, 2022. We have the closed session board meeting minutes from August 9th. Minutes of the special Board of Aldermen Town Hall meeting from August 3rd. And then we have tax releases from 2001 to 2022. And these are taxes that are unobtainable to be recovered, so we just take those off the books. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, a second. Second by Mr. Lombardi. All in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item G, special recognition. We have 3 proclamations this evening, and I will read those. One concerning our Constitution, one concerning POW MIAs, and then one, of course, the 20th anniversary of September 11th. Whereas September 17th, 2022 marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition of this magnificent document in its memorable anniversary, and a privilege to commemorate the occasion with patriotic celebrations. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. Whereas the Constitution is the world's longest surviving written charter of government, marking the United States of America as the world's most enduring beacon of liberty and freedom. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2022 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guarding of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Proclaimed with pride this 8th day of September 2022. You know, part of what we're doing today is guaranteed by our Constitution, the freedom that we have here, and so we are blessed in many ways. City of Southport proclamation for POW MIA National Recognition Day. Whereas the history of our nation was built upon the sacrifices, victories, and defeats of the many men and women who endured battles and hardship while protecting our nation's freedom and security. Whereas tens of thousands of our nation's armed forces have endured unimaginable suffering and deprivation as prisoners of war. And whereas over 81,000 soldiers are still missing from World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Cold War, and Gulf Wars. And whereas while we celebrate each homecoming and pray for the safety of our troops currently serving overseas, we must also remember and honor all of the men and women who remain unaccounted for throughout our nation's history. And whereas in 1998, the United States Congress designated the third Friday in September as POW MIA National Recognition Day. And now therefore, I, Joseph B. Hayden, Mayor of the City of Southport, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and grateful American citizens everywhere, recognize September 17th, 2022 as POW/MIA National Recognition Day and vow that these brave men and women will never be forgotten. Proclaim this 8th day of September 2022. We all think of John McCain, 5 years in a POW camp. 5 years of that young man's life shot down. Amazing, amazing story. Our next proclamation, and if I could have our chief stand with me as I read this. Thank you for standing. Thank you for standing with me. Proclamation recognizing the 21st anniversary of 9/11 as a National Day of Service and Remembrance. On September 11th, 2011, the security of our nation was shattered by cowardly terrorist attacks that killed nearly 3,000 innocent people at the World Trade Center towers in New York City, the United States Pentagon, and in the pristine fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The terrorist goal was to strike a powerful blow to the hearts of all Americans and tear at the fabric of our nation. Out of tragedy came a remarkable spirit of unity, compassion, and determination that will never be forgotten, just as we will never forget those who were lost and injured and the people who rose in service during the rescue and recovery effort and in defense of our nation at home and abroad. In observance of the 21st anniversary of September 11th, 2001, which killed citizens from 92 countries, we hereby adopt the following proclamation in tribute to those lost and injured and the many who gave of themselves in service to their communities and America in the aftermath of the attacks. Whereas people of all ages and walks of life across America and around the world collectively witnessed an event of immense tragedy on September 11th, 2001. Whereas the events of that day instantly transformed everyone's lives, some through personal loss and many others through an unfamiliar scene of individual and national vulnerability. And whereas Americans rose from the shock, unifying the country in national spirit, pride, selflessness, generosity, courage, and service. And whereas many brave people tirelessly and courageously participated in an extremely difficult and dangerous rescue and recovery effort. And whereas September 11th will never be just another day in the hearts and minds of all Americans. And whereas September 11th, 2022 will be the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on America. Whereas many citizens may wish to memorialize September 11th by engaging in or planning to engage in personal and individual acts of community service as part of a solemn day of remembrance and tribute. And whereas on March 19, 2009, the United States Congress passed legislation authorizing the establishment of September 11th as a federally recognized National Day of Service and Remembrance, which was signed into law by President Barack Obama on April 21st, 2009. Whereas President Obama on September 11th, 2009 issued the Patriot Day Proclamation officially designating September 11th as a day of service and remembrance and calling upon all interested Americans to participate in this observance through moments of silence, flying the flag of the United States at half-staff, as well as community service and charitable activities as a tribute to these victims. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Southport ask all citizens to observe September 11th and mark the 21st anniversary of 9/11 as a voluntary day of service and remembrance by all citizens and organizations, adopted this 8th day of September 2022. Thank you for your service. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service. We have men and women who are heroes in this town who rush into buildings every single day, not knowing what's on the other side of that door. So I commend you and the men and women that serve with you. And I look forward to the ceremony Sunday, 9 a.m. at the fire station. Thank you, Chief. Thank you both. Agenda item H1, Morningstar Marina. Eric King, he is the general manager of Morningstar. They're in the marina business. They're not developers. And as the previous owner was, Mr. King and I have had several meetings, and I believe that they're going to be excellent partners for the city of Southport. So thank you, Mr. King, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and Aldermen. I'm glad to be here. A lot of you know me. I've been around for a while, but I am now the general manager of Morningstar Marinas. We're a North Carolina-based company out of Matthews, North Carolina. We operate in the marina side of our business from Florida all the way up to Virginia. At this time, we're in a pretty big acquisition mode where we're acquiring more marinas, which connects us all together. It's pretty awesome what they're doing. Other side of our business is storage. They don't like me to use the word mini storage, but that was where the business started. It's just like boat storage. Storage is storage, but it works. Just kind of wanted to give the board, and I talked to the mayor, just kind of a little update what we're doing in the community, and I welcome every one of you to come down and visit if you haven't been. I know Mr. Carroll down there, and same thing with John, and a lot of work's going on. We're doing a lot since the changeover. June 1st was the official closing date. Some big things we're doing. The open space area out there with the gazebo that all the citizens enjoy, we're working with the Coastal Federation of North Carolina to try to put a living shoreline in. So what that would entail is wakes, erosion, and things of that nature are causing this marsh grass to just slough off, and we're losing it every day, and it's filling in the yacht basin, it's filling in the marina, but what it really boils down to, we're losing space every day. So I'm working with a young lady named Tracy Scrable, super lady with North Carolina, and we're going to try to start getting that in motion. It could be an oyster shell shoreline. There's all kinds of different things that you can do. Sea oats, there's just an open world, and she's going to evaluate what is the best for each section because it's a different type on every part of that property. If you've walked out there, you've seen it. It's just we're losing it every year. It's going back and back and back. Big thing for the town is the kayak launch. I know there's been questions on the board, and I'll tell you from the Morningstar side, I will assure that you will have $25,000 when we get ready to build this thing. And Morningstar wants to be a part of that. We want to get involved in the plans and see if we can help, see what we can do to contribute. We want to blend into the community. We want to see this come to light. We're putting some extra lights down there. We've met with Ellie and Brunswick Electric. We're going to put a little extra lighting down there for the parking, so if there is anything at night down there, they'll have some kind of lighting. Dredging is a big issue with the town. I was talking to Ms. Mosteller here earlier. Dredging is a huge thing all over the United States, especially coastal dredging. It is tough to do, and we're willing to help the town however we can with our expertise and our consultants to get dredged. It is tough. Where to put spoil. It's a federal thing, and it's really, really hard to do, but we're open arms to help you guys in any way you can to get it done because it does help the charm of Southport. So a lot of questions from different people. State Port Pilot, you're going to host the U.S. Open again. We're open arms to get these events back to the marina. A lot of people have asked me. That's not a decision on me. That's more of a Chamber of Commerce, but we're open arms to discuss with them bringing it back next year. A lot of people want to see that back in Southport. Same thing with Military Appreciation Day, which is coming up this weekend, I believe, and a lot of our slip holders participate in that, and I would like to see that back also at the marina, but we have done some events already, the Child's Wish event, and Matthews Ministry was there today for their fishing tournament, and I think they raised over $30,000 that went to Matthews Ministry So it was huge, huge success today for that. I talked to the mayor, one last thing on closing, unless you have questions, I'll be glad to answer. Talking about the kayak launch, you know, we have an issue down there. I told the mayor, I said, what is the town, or what are we going to do about bathrooms? Is it a porta-john? People, we just don't want people urinating, or whatever, in public. Really, it's going to be a nice place. I proposed to the mayor, I've talked to our ownership, and we're willing to go in discussions with the town to build a small restroom the size of the one basically on East Leonard or something that, a unisex, or if you will. No showers, just a restroom, and turn that over to the town. We would build it and turn it over to the town for their regulation, however they see fit. If the board is open to talking about that, or we can go the porta-john route or whatever. But that's a concern on mine down there with especially nighttime and things of that nature. We need something down there for this. And I think it's going to be a big hit. We get a lot of people talking about it. And last but not least, thank you for all the staff, police department, fire department, and inspections. It's got us going with our permits. It was crazy during turnover, trying to get all the permits that you really don't realize you have to get. They've been awesome. I mean, really, the fire marshal and Chief Corin and the inspections department, everybody's been great. And the board, and like I said, the mayor's been down, and we welcome anybody down and how we can help. So I'm an open book. If y'all have any questions, I'll try to answer them however I can.
Any questions? And I urge everyone to go down and visit. The marina is beautiful. It's and they're going to be great partners with the city. Any questions from the board for Mr. King? Yeah, we thank you for that offer with the bathrooms. That's great. With dredging, we look forward to. I'll be back down to visit soon. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the short-term vacation rental ordinance. And as you know, that there was a court case in Wilmington concerning what the city of Wilmington had to do with this. And I would like for our city attorney to give us some insight into this, to these changes that we need to make to the ordinance. Please note that the city of Southport will still be able to regulate short-term rentals through zoning. So we still can protect the unique neighborhoods of Southport. So, Mr. Blanchard.
I think the mayor's kind of hit the nail on the head there with that short description of where we're left after this. Back in April, a case went to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. Schroeder is the name of the case, Schroeder versus City of Wilmington, dealing with short-term rental regulation. And Wilmington had a regulatory process that was kind of similar to ours in that it was partly zoning, so that short-term rentals were allowed in some zoning districts, not allowed in others. One of their other restrictions, though, one of the other things is that they required permits, annual permits, registration and permits. And that's the narrow part of the statute that we're concerned about. We require annual permits, and many of our zoning, or not our zoning ordinance, our short-term rental ordinance provisions are tied to people's annual permits. And the Schroeder case, the Court of Appeals held that the General Assembly's amendments to Chapter 160 prohibited cities and towns from requiring registration or permitting for short-term rentals. So many of the towns in the state, and I'll go ahead and tell you, my understanding is that ours was modeled after Asheville's, but it's similar in many respects to Wilmington. Most of the cities and towns in the state have already taken action to modify their short-term rental ordinances to comply with what the Schroeder case said. The Schroeder case, in that one, the property owners asked the Court of Appeals to strike down all of the ordinance for Wilmington. And the Court of Appeals came back and kind of split the baby on it. They said
No, the General Assembly's only prohibited towns from regulating by requiring permits. And those things, those provisions that are tied to the permit requirement are also prohibited. For example, and we've got some provisions that are like that. It's section 2.6I, or L, I should say, in our ordinance in your packets, that requires an annual zoning permit for homestays and short-term vacation rentals. We can no longer do that. And we've collected permit fees from people. Wilmington, Asheville, and the other towns, cities and towns around the state are suspending enforcement of the permit requirement and refunding those permit fees. So that's, board members, that's what I'm proposing or suggesting for the town, and I'll give you a suggested motion in a few minutes. But one of the other things is that the Court of Appeals did specifically allow Wilmington and said that other cities could do the same thing. You can continue to regulate short-term rentals through zoning, and you can have other regulations. For example, Wilmington's had a requirement that short-term rental operators provide at least one off-street parking space per bedroom. Court of Appeals said that's fine because that's not dependent on the permit or the registration. Also, you can prohibit things like Wilmington's prohibited cooking in bedrooms, required the operators to post the telephone numbers for the police department, required insurance, things like that. And those, we do those things as well. Those requirements can stay in place. And I think most importantly for us, for most of the towns, you know, the reason people want to limit short-term rentals, one of the big ones, Asheville's reasons were a little bit different. They felt like it was eating up housing stock that could be rented to people, and it was driving up the price of rentals. But one of the other things is that people don't like to have short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods because they complain about noise and traffic, rowdy people coming in and having parties. Well, you can still deal with that through zoning. So in our case, my suggestion to get rid of this legal overhang we've got right now is that we should suspend enforcement of the permitting requirement, that's section 2.6L, and direct the staff to prepare a list of the persons who paid for permits so that they can be refunded. And finally, to refer this back to the planning board to suggest text amendments to bring us into compliance with the new requirements after the case. And Gordon and I have been talking about this, and the clerk as well as the board members. We've had a lot of informal discussions about it, and I think that's probably our best path forward until we get a good comprehensive fix, because we do have a lot of very good things that we want to keep in our ordinance so that it's not just a free-for-all. But at the same time, there are some things that we're going to have to do. We can either do them voluntarily and it be painless, or we can have a court tell us to do them, in which case we're paying back the money with interest and attorney's fees on both sides. So this seems like a no-brainer to me.
All right, thank you for that excellent discussion. And again, we can use zoning to help protect our neighborhoods. So I'll review the motion that for the city to suspend registration and permit fees for short-term rentals and refund any collected permit fees to this date, and remand the ordinance back to the planning board for further review and for a text amendment.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor, to incorporate those three items.
Thank you, Alderman Allen. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. item 3, and this is it's a public hearing, and this is a topic that's close to all the aldermen, very close to me as mayor, Historic Preservation Commission. Historic preservation is an important issue. It encompasses not only the people who came before us. I think of Randy's great-grandfather, J. Arthur Dozier. We just celebrated Art Newton's 100th birth anniversary. Our river pilots, we saw these 2 beautiful ships go by tonight. Think of what it was like in the 1800s. And there's still river pilots out there today. And also the homes, the churches, the buildings, the cemeteries, absolutely. So, and we're fortunate to have local historian Jim McKee who can help guide us. And we have this very active Southport Historical Society. So I'm very excited about this. This ordinance for the creation of a Historic Preservation Commission. I'm excited that the aldermen that serve on the ad hoc committee, and I'll turn this over to Mayor Pro Tem Karen Mosteller.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been a long time coming. This conversation started about 40 years ago. By way of background, in 1980, the City of Southport filed an application with the National Registry of Historic Places to establish a designated historic district. The application was accepted, and a map that shows the boundary lines for the Southport Historic District, recognized by the National Registry of Historic Places, can be found on our city website. During these past 40 years, much work has been done by citizens that recognize just how important our historic character is to our community. These individuals understand that without a local historic commission, there is no way to protect our historic character. This evening, we are considering the first step in the creation of ordinance that will support our city's first named core value, preserve our historic character. In accordance with state law, before we can move forward with any plan for preservation, we must first establish a local historic commission. The purpose of the ordinance under consideration is to establish this local historic commission. With minor changes, the language of this proposed ordinance reflects the state model ordinance. In addition to establishing the commission, this ordinance identifies the commission's powers and duties and rules of procedure. Again, this is only the first step and will be added to the city's code of ordinances, not the Unified Development Ordinance. The ordinance we are discussing does not establish any design guidelines. The work of the commission, among other things, including updating the inventory of historic structures and creating guidelines. That's what they'll be doing for us. The commission will have public meetings to allow for citizen input throughout the process. Once the commission completes the requirements and guidelines, the planning board will review them and offer recommendations for consideration by the Board of Aldermen. This is the same process as for any text amendment to the UDO. As always, the Board of Aldermen will have a public hearing prior to the consideration of that text amendment. Again, tonight, this is only the first step. Once the commission is appointed, the real work begins. And as such, I make a motion that we adopt the proposed ordinance to establish a local historic commission.
Thank you. So, in a second, but we need to have I declare the public hearing open. No, that's good. You're fine. No, it's fine. It's good. This is going to pass. I guarantee it. We're good. But I want to do, if there's anyone that would bet on this one, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to pass. Right, Robert Carroll, we're good. So, is there anyone that would like to speak concerning the establishment of a local historic district? Okay, anyone? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed, and we do have a motion. We have a motion on the table to establish a local historic preservation commission by Mayor Pro Tem. We have actually 2 seconds, Mr. Carroll, and also Alderman Lowe Davis. So this is great. I told you this was going to pass. Any further discussion? This is a great day for Southport with passing this. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. So one of our next steps is that citizens can apply to be on this committee, and the ad hoc committee members, Alderman Carroll, Alderman Davis, Alderman Mostello, will review the applications. I believe you'll interview the candidates as well, and there will be, I believe, seven members. Yeah, and 2 alternates, and I'll pick the liaison for that committee.
And we'll be advertising, so be looking for an advertisement. It'll be, I'm sorry to jump in there, but it'll be the volunteer forms that you normally do to be on beautification or any committee. You can get those from Town Hall, and I think you can do it online on the website as well, but that'll be our process.
So this is one more way for our citizens to volunteer and to serve. If you had applied for the planning board or one of our other boards and did not get on there and want to serve, this is another way of doing it. So thank you, and thank you, board, for this discussion and the passing of this code of ordinance for historic preservation. Item 4, not as exciting but equally as important. But it's a good topic, though, because it's neat. The exterior lighting ordinance amendment, there will be a public hearing on this. And this is important because this is how our city looks. The lighting, I mean, is so important. It affects our environment, it affects our quality of life issues. So I look forward to this discussion, and I call on Mayor Pro Tem Mostello. Yeah, after you speak, we'll do the hearing, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Hang on a sec, I've got a gadget so I'm supposed to be having it up. Hang on. Here we go. This ordinance came out of, the genesis of this ordinance was the street light policy. When we were working on the streetlight policy, we actually tried to work in some of this, and our city attorney said, that's really not where that needs to be, you need to do this. And so that was the original genesis for this. Basically, I can talk through it. I don't know if you want to look at the first 2 items, I can just kind of talk you through it. The first 2 items basically address light trespass. Right now, we don't really have ordinance that we have any way to enforce light trespass. Like you've got a light that's shining on your neighbor's house into their windows and that sort of thing. We need an ordinance that allows us to recognize that that's a problem, and that then you can shield it or do whatever. So that's really it. The first 2 items are, once we adopt this ordinance, the first 2 items go immediately into effect, as does the rest of it, but any lights installed prior to tomorrow are grandfathered in. So it's not like because you have a non-compliant light that you immediately have to do something. The ordinance does provide for you or for citizens and businesses, if there is a non-compliant light, then to replace it once you're replacing it, or replace it with a compliant light. When we talk about light trespass, we also are talking about light that you have direct visualization. That's also part of the conversation. Most of this ordinance is reflective, and the light fixtures you'll see in the examples reflect the dark skies conversation and their guidelines, meaning that is meant to shield light from going up to the night sky. So perhaps like when we were children, we could see the Milky Way once again, and to shield them. So it's also, as the mayor pointed out, it also has to do with the environment, insects, that sort of thing. The building blocks. We were also in the Atlantic Flyway from March to June, and then again from August to November, we're in the Flyway. So how it affects our birds to have artificial light. You can see that the light fixtures, let me go back up. The color temperature is also part of this. This reflects what we've got in the UDO as well as in the streetlight policy, the warmer color temperatures. Insects and animals in general are less affected by light in the red spectrum, which is that lower color temperature, than the higher blue spectrum. They don't see those lights. Of course, temporary use of seasonal holiday lighting is exempted with the exception of A and B. If they're trespassing, you're creating a problem, then that's a different issue for your neighbor or something. But in general, they're exempted from this. Light strings, which a lot of people, we've gotten to where we like to have these little lights and that sort of thing. Lights utilizing bulbs or lamps equal to or less than 15 lumens are exempted from this as well. Of course, with the exception of you can't have like trespass. And that's really it. I think of as far as you would. I think that pretty much sums it up. I said it was grandfathered in. As of the end of tomorrow. If we'd adopted today, then if you installed it after tomorrow, it should be in compliance. We've got examples of these. These are just representative examples. They're not literal examples, but it gives you an idea of how the light is to be controlled and shielded. It gives you different ideas about that, but the actual design details are going to vary from these. So I think that's about sums it up conversation-wise.
That this is on page 89 of the agenda, which is on the website, so you can always look at it. And it's the general idea is light goes down, not up, not out. And I guess all of the lighting committee, we all looked at the online catalogs at Lowe's and Home Depot, and you have a large number of choices. But you also don't have to run up there, take everything down on your house and run up there and replace it. Wait till it falls off. Or not, depending on that.
Alderman Mostelli, could you help me with something here? So
I'll do my best.
Oh, I'm sure you can do it. Because one of my degrees happens to be in political science, and there's textualism, and there's legislative intent. One is you're looking to see where the commas are in the sentence structure to see what the whole thing was, and if you paid attention to the Second Amendment ruling, it hung on a comma. Legislative intent, I believe you and I had a conversation about this, and I want to make sure that if I'm wrong, and I don't want to spread the wrong story here. So when I first looked at this, I realized that the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Baptist Church, and the Episcopal Church all have some sort of uplighting, including the iconic water tower. So as I understood our conversation to show legislative intent, if the light fixture is more than, let's say, 45 degrees, so it's up, some point upward, but it's fixed on the side of a building, on the thing that is supposed to illuminate and does that, that in it itself even while it's pointed up, is not a violation of this code. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. What I would say to that is you would want, just like anything, you would want the light pinned on what it's supposed to be lighting.
Right. So from that conversation, I think all of those churches would be okay. They're not in violation of anything. Even if they had to replace it, they would be still okay because the way the light is fixed on their buildings.
I would hold off on answering that question until, I mean, that's an interpretation, and unless we've looked at all of these structures, I don't think we can answer that question.
Well, what I would say, I think, Alderman Carroll, you're right. What I would say about that is that the thing, if they have light trespass, then they would need to do some kind of shielding, which is a nominal thing.
Right, I think we're all in agreement of the light trespass, the bright light shining in the guy's bedroom or your living room, whatever.
Or it's not focused on what it's intended to be focused on. So if it's just going out into the night sky, our intention is to comply with dark sky. So it's not to just throw light into the air.
Well, that was my statement, is that it's
It's
focused on the topic,
Yeah.
on the thing that you're trying to light, as opposed to having a random spotlight just throwing off light somewhere. So that would be the legislative intent, is what we're trying to get at. Though it's not hinged on the angle of the light, it's hinged on what it's doing.
I think that it's probably pretty clear when it says D. D says, because really those are almost like landscape lights, what you're talking about. They fall in that category. It says lighting used to accent landscaping, architectural features, or art shall be aimed and shielded to avoid light emitting upwards toward the sky and prevent direct visualization of the source from adjacent properties. So I think that answers what your concern was.
The only thing that still would be in question, maybe the water tower.
Well, I would hope that we would aim it at the water tower so we were doing the right thing, as Alderman Carroll would say.
I'm in agreement with you on that, ma'am.
Yeah, we had a conversation in a session that y'all didn't show up to, but we did, about this. And, you know, the idea is that if there's light going beyond the water tower that shouldn't be, it's not focused on its intended, on lighting up the water tower, then we should shut it off, right? No. Okay, but doing the right thing means doing the right thing. And if I'm going to require you at your home to point your light on your house because that's the intention, then the city of Southport should do the same thing. That was my point, doing the right thing.
Right.
Do the right thing.
But we're going to use a shield to do the right thing.
Correct. I like controversy, though.
I can see the headline now. Alderman darkens the brilliance of Southport. Destroys nighttime beauty. Film at 11.
Iconic tower taken offline.
While we're here, let's do the public hearing. We can have more comments. I declare the public hearing open. Anyone who would like to speak, please.
Ms. Brownbush?
She was in attendance.
Try to make this brief. I'm a transplant, as the locals say, and I chose this beautiful town for retirement over a decade ago. I came to Southport to let it change me. Side street strolling, tree admiring, waterfront sitting, and casual chit-chat. These essences of Southport seeped into my soul. Equally impressive as the sheer beauty of this little town is the dedication and hard work the city boards display, both as teams and as contributing individuals. All should be commended. It is not easy to preserve, maintain, and simultaneously monitor an explosion of modification and building. Recently, the city led by example in revising the UDO street exterior light policy and held itself accountable to stop contributing to public light pollution and trespass. Now the city ordinances need revised to address general and residential lighting as well. With documented guidelines, we, the residents, natives, and transplants alike, can share accountability for the greater good of dark sky. I'm not going to lecture you about what dark sky is. If you Google it, you'll learn of its vitalness to biodiversity. And as I begin this conversation, let me end with this. Take a walk under the moon tonight, gazing upward into the vastness and the beauty of the night. Let that essence of Southport seep into your soul. And may you find peace from today and hope for tomorrow. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak on the exterior lighting?
I forgot to thank y'all for the tree lights along Howe and Moore, for them to get back on. So I just wanted to thank all who's responsible for that, and I meant to a couple of weeks ago and I forgot. So thank you. We love those lights.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the proposed lighting ordinance.
We have, excellent, good. We have a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem, Alderman Davis, and I believe Alderman Carroll was the third. So any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Item 5, the public hearing on the UDO text amendment concerning tree preservation. I'll call on our interim planner, Mr. McLeod, Wes McLeod from the Cape Fear Council of Government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and board. I am here before you to discuss modifications to the tree preservation ordinance in the town's and the city's UDO. Before you are a number of amendments to existing tree preservation ordinance. This round of updates strengthens regulations by requiring as-built tree survey for residential and non-residential new construction and subdivisions, defining how to calculate mitigation credit for retaining heritage live oaks, setting penalties for violations of the regulations, and then defining the responsibilities of the city, the Forestry Committee, and the citizens, and then also including within the portion of the text outside of the appendix the definition of regulated tree. The Planning Board has reviewed and recommended this amendment for adoption to the Board of Aldermen. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions you or the board may have.
Any questions for Mr. McLeod? Thank you. So in Southport, we love our trees, so I declare the a public hearing open. Anyone like to speak on the tree preservation ordinance? Or have any questions for Mr. McLeod? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed, and I will entertain a motion. So the motion will be that we approve the statement of land use consistency, and we adopt the zoning text amendment concerning tree preservation. Well, that's okay. That's the first, and who's the second? Okay, Tom Lombardi, Alderman Lombardi. So Alderman Davis and Alderman Lombardi. Any further discussion on the tree ordinance? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Our next item is item 6. This is a public hearing, the UDO text amendment concerning the Central Business District and Business District. Mr. McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the tree preservation ordinance, this is also a modification of provisions in the UDO, though these specifically concern modifications to the CBD and BD district. In particular, modifications to the maximum height of structures within the CBD and BD, modification of the permitted number of stories within the CBD and BD, modification of the parking requirements within the CBD and BD, and addition of buffers in the BD and CBD districts. The Planning Board has also reviewed this amendment and adopted a statement of land use consistency and made a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for its approval. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you with any questions you may have. I know there may be some discussion on this item concerning further modifications.
Okay. I declare the public hearing open, and are there any questions or anyone that wants to come up to comment concerning the business district, Central Business District changes?
I believe
Could we
Mr. I'm sorry.
Any chance we could go through and kind of list off those before we go into public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Specifically?
Yes, that is fine.
We can list them during public hearing. Now's the time to ask questions and that type thing, so you can list them now. The public hearing is open.
Before we have comment, let's go ahead and do that.
Certainly.
He's going to do that, but
Sure.
what I'm saying is it can be done during the public hearing because it's open. He can speak during it. Yes.
Thank you, Alderman Carroll. In particular, there's been modifications to the supplemental use standards for mixed uses. Those provisions are contained in your packet on starting on page 108. Those would restrict for first floor uses to permitted business uses only. In addition, the first floor area devoted to dwellings in the CB and BD could not exceed the area devoted to the permitted business uses. In other words, you cannot have more floor area devoted to a residential use than, say, a retail shop, for example, in the CBD or BD, or wherever mixed uses are permitted. In the PUD or the OI district, the existing provision would exist that would allow for dwellings to be twice the business use. So again, that modification of the 1-to-1 ratio for retail or commercial to dwellings would only apply to the CBD and BD. Under section 5, there's a provision concerning height and a relationship or a reference to table 3.2. Table 3.2 in the CBD and BD would restrict the height requirement, move it from 40 foot to 30 foot. It's presently 40 foot. It's proposed to go from 40 to 30. There is an allowance in areas of the special flood hazard area. We do have some of those to allow you to go up to 40 feet in order to essentially capture additional floor space. There's a modification to the design standards portion of the development standards. That provision further specifies for new construction in the CBD and BD that no structure shall exceed 2 stories. That's contained on page 109 of your agenda packet. Moving on, there's a host of changes to the parking requirements. And these concern minimum off-street parking ratios. Just for clarification, when we talk about parking and off-street parking in particular, that means you're providing parking on your property, or in the case of Southport, there's allowance to provide parking on someone else's property, but not to use on-street parking per se. These modifications concern off-street parking. There is a provision starting on, let's see, on Section 3 of minimum off-street parking that would strike the reduction for proximity to on-street parking for applicable residential uses. On 110, under Section 3. Moving forward, there's a table, table 3.4. As it stands now, 3.4 only is applicable to the BD district. So at present, in the CBD, there's no parking requirements at all for new construction, redevelopment, et cetera. This table would include CBD. And so moving forward, in the CBD, if you had a change of use and you did not expand your floor area by now 15%, you would not have to provide any parking. This proposal will also modify the existing threshold in the BD district from 25% expansion down to 15% expansion. I hope that makes sense. That's clear to everybody. Okay. And then lastly, in regard to buffers, there's a modification of the buffer requirements within the BD and CBD. In particular, in the BD and CBD, where adjacent to an R10 or R20 zone property, that's where you'll have your residential uses. At present, in the BD, where adjacent to R10 or R20, there's a 10-foot required buffer. That's been proposed to be increased to 20 foot. In the CBD, there is no required buffer anywhere, but where adjacent to an R10 or R20, that's being proposed to increase from 0 to 20 feet. And then where adjacent to an multifamily or MF, MH, or O&I, that's being proposed to be increased from 0 feet to 10 feet as well. And that concludes the list of changes. Thank you for requesting the clarification.
Is there anyone that would like to ask a question or would like to speak during this public hearing? Yes, in the back, yes, sir. And there's one here and then one in the back. Yes, Swinson, Paul Swinson. Yes, come to the podium.
I'm trying to put it together in my head. And we own property down on Business District down the Yacht Basin. And I'm thinking about it and I'm saying, well, number one, you got to be 9 feet up and then another 4 foot for the, so really you got to be 13 or 14 feet up before you put in the first floor. Okay, and let's say you want to have like a big building, let's say like the Frying Pan, and you want your ceiling to be like 10 feet. So then you're 24 feet up in the air already. Now you got to put a roof on top of it, and you can only go up another 6 feet. And I'm wondering, are you really starting to restrict the design characteristics down there? That's the only thing I'm talking about. I'm not worried about somebody putting 3 stories up, but I'm worrying about a roof line just restricting it so much that it's not going to look so good, is what I'm saying.
That's not going to change. That you would have 40 feet, just as you do now.
You do.
And there's a provision. There's a provision.
I got it was business district because that's what we.
Yeah, it is business district, but there's a provision. Paul, hang on one second. I'll read it. Or let Wes do it.
I'm good.
Thank you. That's a good question. So when you're located in a special flood hazard area and subject to the regulatory flood protection elevation meaning that you gotta have your first floor at a certain elevation, you'd still be subject to a 40-foot height requirement. Only in the special flood hazard area, though.
Yes, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you. Many of our businesses in downtown Southport are looking at buildings that will be functionally obsolete over the next 20 years or so. In some of these buildings, if they were to need to tear down and rebuild to the new setback standards, they would become essentially non-buildable lots. Are we grandfathered with a building in an existing footprint to be able to build back in that location?
Okay, Mr. McLeod, very good question.
The setbacks aren't being modified. There's no modification of setbacks. The only thing that's being changed potentially is the buffer. If you are adjacent to a residential area, then yes, potentially if you are encroaching into what would presume to be a buffer and you did need to rebuild, you would have to comply with that new buffer requirement.
That's only in CBD.
And that's also only adjacent to residential. If you're CBD, abutting CBD, there's no setback.
That's correct, yeah.
But business district, is there the setback requirement?
Only in the instance that you're adjacent to an R10 or R20, so that's, going up House Street. There's certain parcels that are adjacent to that. In that instance, in this proposal, I believe that the buffer proposal, actually it is increasing from 10, there's an existing 10-foot buffer, so it would be increasing an additional 10 feet.
So I would request that the board look at that considerably. There are several parcels of land that are in the business district along House Street that if an additional 10-foot buffer is required, when these buildings become functionally obsolete and they need to be rebuilt, if we are not able to go back into the existing footprint of the property, essentially these lots become unbuildable lots. So just please consider that when we're looking at this ordinance.
Any further comments during our public hearing or questions? Welcome.
All right, well, thanks for everybody's time here tonight. I felt it was important to get on record with a couple things. I feel like I may not be too popular this evening, but I feel like I need to say a couple things here.
Could you state your name? I'm sorry.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Andrew Lang.
Okay, thank you.
Along with my wife, Bridget, we're the owners of multiple commercial properties, 2 businesses, and a personal residence here in Southport. We're also raising 3 young children here in Southport. We recently purchased 101 East Moore and 114 North Howe. So I do have a lot at stake in our downtown with both business and property. There's no denying that. I'm here to speak about the Planning Board's recommendation, the recommended reduction in max height of buildings in the business districts. I will not bore you with going in depth about the significant loss in tax revenue for the city as well as the future loss of revenue for existing and potential new local businesses by this reduction. I personally believe that we'd be going backwards out of a fear of the unknown. It simply is an emotional, fearful decision. This recommendation came out of a knee-jerk reaction to one building, 115 North Howe, the car insurance building. We cannot base decisions off of one building that is not even constructed. You will see our proposed project go through the planning board next week. What we have planned will be 40 feet. It will be a brick building that will blend very well with the existing footprint. I guarantee after just a couple years, it will be as if this new addition has been a part of Southport for many, many years, just as all previous buildings have become a part of the charm, some older and some newer. No matter what the decision is tonight, this project will not be affected as we apply it under the current UDO. In reality, the value of our property will go up if the Aldermen vote to reduce the height of these districts, as we'll have one of the few 40-foot buildings. But I am speaking for the future growth of our city, not just about personal gain. The max height in our residential districts is 40 feet. Why have our commercial districts lower than residential districts? If a single-family home can be built to 40 feet, why would we not allow our business districts the same right? How many towns in America have their business districts at a lower max height than their residential districts? There cannot be many. I have researched a few places and haven't found one yet. I want you to imagine all the buildings in the business district as 3 stories right now, which most are not, and won't be for a long, long time, even if the UDO remains the same at 40 feet. Would that change the ambiance of Southport? I would say no. We have a really beautiful waterfront with a fantastic walkable downtown right next to it. Many towns have one or the other, but not both. 3-story buildings in downtown would not change this experience. We need continued investment and energy in our business districts. Most of us have been to cities or towns where there are boarded up windows and no locals or tourists to be found. If there are recommendations of highly restricted growth, imagine how things will look for our children. I say just wait and see. Monitor the growth with a watchful eye. 40 feet will not destroy our town. That I can guarantee. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else who would like to speak? Oh, yes, ma'am, please.
Is there anything in this proposal or in the current ordinances that restricts the number of residential opportunities in the central business district, such as, short-term apartments and other kinds of apartments, or, boutique hotels or something like that?
This provision would further restrict in the CBD and the BD the amount of floor area that can be dedicated to a residential use type. The city is not proposing to restrict short-term rentals as part of this within the CBD or BD specifically. That would be a separate matter. Hotels and boutique hotels, et cetera, would also be a separate matter than this.
Any idea how many 40-foot buildings we currently have in the CBD?
No, sir.
Yes, 0. I knew I was trying to get it on the record. Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, please, Alderman.
Can somebody explain to me, because I wasn't tracking this when I was going through the process, what is the intent of the additional 10 feet buffer?
To protect the character of our historic district. I believe that's the intent. That was the planning board's intent when they made the recommendation, based on their minutes.
Buffers are, and if I may...
I'm sorry, I was referring to the height restriction.
Okay.
You're talking about the distance.
Okay.
I'm talking about the buffer. So if we have a 10-foot buffer now and you need to redo your building, we're going to expand that at that point to a 20-foot buffer. Is that what I heard?
That's correct.
And I'm just trying to figure out what's the intent. What are we trying to protect by adding that extra 10 feet?
buffers are used as a tool, in particular in denser districts where you have zero setbacks. And so where you don't want to have, for example, a setback from a CBD next to CBD, but you may want to have increased buffer where you're in a business district adjacent to a residential area, you can have a buffer provision rather than establishing a setback. I was not present for the planning board recommendation, but I believe there is increased concern about having business establishments closer to residential areas, and in this case, I believe the proposal increases in the CBD where adjacent to R10 or R20, it would go from 0 to 20. In the BD, it would go from 10 to 20. And then in the CBD where adjacent to MF and MH, it would go from 0 to 10.
So it's, in some areas, it would go, got 0 now, but it would go to a 10-foot. And others, it goes to a 20-foot.
Yes, sir.
And I'm trying to figure out why we'd have 10 in one and a 20 in the other.
There's a range of different buffer width requirements at present in your table. They are most restrictive typically in districts outside the BD and the CBD due to the density and the size of the parcels. But I couldn't tell you offhand the number of parcels that would be affected by the 10 to 20 without looking at it specifically.
I'm just not sure how many, because we've had a gentleman come in here multiple times. He has an odd-shaped lot.
Sure.
And he hasn't built anything on it, so it would be a new building.
Sure.
So now, I don't know if his lot backs up to anything.
If he does have an odd-shaped lot, I can't tell you for certain that he would be subject to meeting the variance requirements, but if it is a unique condition and it's an odd-shaped lot, that is the tool to use, particularly for dimensional concerns.
If our attorney could comment.
Alderman Alt, you raised a good point that oddly enough, we were just talking about that. The manager and I stepped out just a moment ago to discuss that. The issue that you had raised about corners, some areas, some of these lots, if they are rendered completely unbuildable, you know, as a result of having to comply with that.
It just seems like a taking to me, but that's just me.
Yes, yeah, that's a concern. If you can get a variance now, it's a different story, obviously, because you can still use it. But if you get to a situation where literally nothing can be built on that, and you've taken away all the usable value, you potentially got a regulatory taking. So is that perhaps we need to think about that, whether that one small thing is something that we're really hard set on.
Is there a remedy?
There's a difference between being able to build what you want and building what is acceptable based on the regulations.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. It has to render it essentially, if it renders something unbuildable, you know, there's no economically feasible way to use it. And I can imagine if you had a really narrow building, very small one, and now because of this buffer requirement, you can't rebuild. We got a problem with that. We either have to give
I'm just trying to figure out how we can pass some of this tonight and continue one piece of that until we figure that part out and look at what the lots look like in that area, how many people are we impacting by this, and what's the best way. Listen,
I don't know if there are any such lots or not. I'm just saying.
I don't know either.
That's a hypothetical that, you know, is something we need to think about.
But I would have preferred to have that information available to me to know whether or not I'm going to be doing a taking of someone.
I just want to ask that's why we had the variance process. The variance process. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Would that not be a remedy? I mean, isn't there a remedy to this?
It is a remedy.
Because we don't ever want to render anybody unable to use their property.
Indeed, certainly not. However, there is a provision in the statute that states that the property has to be unique. So if they're similar shaped lots, technically, the Board of Adjustment could not grant the variance on that ground. However, the Board of Adjustment can act as they so please. essentially.
Yeah, I mean, the requirement that it has to be a kind of a unique situation. Let's say you had a long strip in CBD and they're just on the very ends, there are these two very narrow buildings. They're not no longer, you know, a unique situation merely because there's another one at the other end of the other end of the street. What they mean is, that, you know, not all of them in that whole strip are that way, and really they're not. They're not similarly situated because this is the only one that needs the buffer. The guy on the end, the people inside of them won't.
Correct.
And you're exactly right. Assuming they get a variance, no, you don't have a taking problem at all. But you've got to rely on the Board of Adjustment doing the right thing there.
And I would hope we could do that. The other thing I would say is what is unique about Southport is we have 11 different sizes of lots. We have lots that are 40 by 40 that are a business lot that, Robert, I'm probably, was that, what were the dimensions of Ron's lot? Something similar to that. And he got a variance to do what he needed to do. So for the time being, I would think that process would stand.
That is a way to work around it, right. And oddly enough, that's the thing we were talking about out there. Yeah, you can get a variance, that gives you favors. You can get a variance, and that you know, puts you back in the same situation that you are. It's just that, you know, we need to hope that people do the right thing instead of getting some, you know, situation where a person's not present for the BOA meeting or they've just...
Oh, you can bet they'll be present.
Unreasonable.
So the bottom line is, we think, in almost all cases, there is a avenue of appeal, a due process to look to to get a variance on it. And so we're hoping, because we don't have data to prove otherwise, that this will not be a taking.
Well, let the attorney say, but it can't be a taking.
If you get a variance to put you back in the same situation you were to start with, certainly there's no taking.
I understand that, but we think the right avenue for whatever shape you're on, whatever you're trying to do, that you have still, even with this statute, an avenue to appeal to.
Right.
Then I'm much better with it.
You're right. That is the classic variance situation. I've got a funny shaped lot and I can't comply with these requirements because of this odd shape, and there's nothing else I can do with it. As they call it, it creates a hardship. And you know, that would qualify for a variance. Again, you always hope that the people on the Board of Adjustment end up doing the right thing instead of somebody just saying, well, that's not good enough for me. You shouldn't have bought it that way, which oddly enough is not self-created. But
and if the Board of Adjustment did not do the right thing, the next remedy is the Superior Court.
Right.
The Superior Court knows what a taking is.
And if I may,
we're trying to avoid that part.
Of course.
You may, of course, always modify your ordinance. You of course may always modify your ordinance. And you know, so I would say I don't want to suggest modification to this if you're very concerned. You know, in particular in the BD going from 10 to 20, you could request that it go from 10 to 15, or leave it at it as is. But you know, don't want to.
You are correct. In order to pass this tonight, we could pass it as is. If we find that we've made a technical error that was unintended, we can change that one piece later on.
It's a living, breathing document.
Okay. I just want to make sure, I understand that. I just want to make sure everybody else understands that, okay?
Are we still, when we come out of public hearing, I got a couple.
Yep. Still in the public hearing, absolutely. Yes.
I would ask that you would consider an amendment to add that if something is functionally obsolete and needs to be rebuilt, it can be rebuilt in the same footprint, which would take away the possible taking that we're looking at, and the need to go before the Board of Adjustment and hope that they're going to do the right thing in order to get a property to be buildable once again. Thank you.
There is one other alternative. If it's not as accurate or as it should be, if this ordinance is not as clear as it should be, or there's a problem with it, we can always send it back to the planning board to tweak it, unless that's an undue burden. I mean, if you're doing a surgery and you leave a sponge in and you know it, you don't sew them up and say, I'll come back and get it later. So I try not to use medical metaphors, but I mean, if we think there's a problem,
Yeah, I think
but if there's not a problem, then you can pass it as is, with the cognizant fact that they can get a variance, and that we know that they're not a numerous number of lots that would create this situation. So anyway, any further comments, any further questions? Yes, Mr. Swenson, come on up.
I might not be the flavor of the month here, but I think this man's right, that this is a knee-jerk reaction, and I don't think it's all thought all the way through. Some other items that have come up tonight are historic preservation, tree preservation, preservation of the cemetery. But there's no preservation of the town commercially. I've been saying this for 10 years. I've gone to the planning board over and over again. We need architectural guidelines for all commercial properties. If you want to protect this town, this is where you have to go. You can put a, is it still on? You can put a 30-foot height limit on it, but I'll tell you what, I've got a piece of property right on House Street. If I wanted to, I could bulldoze it down tomorrow, build an igloo, and stick an ice cream cone coming out of the top, and there's not a damn thing that anybody in this town could do about it. That's what I have to say.
We're working on that.
Yes. Yes. Who else? Yes. Yes, sir. You were behind me.
Hi, I'm sorry, I didn't prepare anything. I just came from work. Just wanted to say that my family and I moved down to Southport a few years ago, own a couple properties and a business, so I don't think this is a knee-jerk reaction. I think, you know, as he said, there's no limitations to what somebody can or cannot do right now. And something like this going in, I don't think it's going to adversely affect business to put a limit on the height, especially next to residential zones or having setbacks when they're next to residential zones. These houses, what we're talking about with the car insurance building, have been there for over 100 years. Now they're going to have a building right up against them, and all the parking from this new business, because they have no parking, will be flooding our streets. Won't be able to have people come over. It's going to be like the 4th of July every day of the week, every day. We don't have the capacity for that, especially on Nash Street. Additionally, there's no noise limitation in the city. So that means this rooftop bar will be having people out, music, noise, just dinner people around, affecting us. Like, you go out and want to sit out on the porch, well, we're going to have to deal with the din of the noise. I'm not saying this, I'm against the development of the property, but there's got to be a limit. There's got to be some there's got to be some ceiling about what they can and cannot do, just because nobody thought of this condition that somebody would put a 4-story building when there's no 3-story building in the central business district and if there's been businesses in this town for over 100 years, apparently everybody else can do it without having a 4-story building. I don't see why it has to be a 4-story building now. And actually, I have to get back to work right now, so that's all I have to say for the moment. Thank you.
Could you give us your name and
My name is Glenn Patterson, 102 West Nash.
Any other further comments or questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Gephardt, 206 St. George Street. I would suggest the attorney look at this closer. A taking doesn't have to be 100% taking. If you look at the Burt-Harris Act, I suggest you look into that. If you change zoning in a knee-jerk reaction like that, you are opening yourself up to a lawsuit. It's not just 100% taking. It is if you're reducing the value of that property, and it's specifically aimed at the car building or this, I think you're opening up yourself for a lawsuit. And before you do that, I would have your attorney research that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I'd say unfortunately, these changes do not apply to the car building in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, any further comments, questions for Mr. McLeod? There are many factors in this ordinance, and
I have a couple of things for Wes. I don't know if this is appropriate now to say
this is the time, yes.
Wes, one thing on item 2, I think that it would be, I would ask that we strike the first sentence so that then it's consistent with the table. Additionally, I would ask, and this really isn't a knee-jerk reaction. Some of this language actually came from the UDO work when we were working with the UDO. It did not get adopted at that time, but it was part of that. So some of this, especially these parking tables in CBD and the footprint and that sort of thing, just so you know. The other thing I would ask that I think practically we have been operating on the old UDO when we've discussed the amount of parking spaces required for mixed use for residential. I went back to the old ordinance and it required 2 parking spaces for each residence dwelling in CBD or business. And somehow it got to be 1 in the current. I would ask that we also change that back to 2.
And thank you, Alderman. On 2, 2 specifically refers to CBD. Striking the first sentence, is there a need to add within the CBD and BD clause and BD, all residential uses require full compliance with off-street parking requirements? Clarifying that in the CBD and BD, that all residential uses, okay. And then for mixed uses, then would be in the parking table in particular.
Yes, sir. It's still in table 3 on the mixed uses. Wait a minute.
Anyone else? Anything else, Pro Tem? Anyone else would like to make a comment, have a question? Board members, anybody? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed, and I will entertain a motion.
I move approval of ordinance of the amendments to sections 3.7, 3.9, 3.11, 3.14, 3.17 of the Unified Development Ordinance for the City of Southport, because these proposed amendments are reasonable in the public interest, because it protects and preserves the city's character and heritage, protects the environment, and protects Southport's aesthetic beauty, and also put in there with the 2 modifications as stated by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Is there a second? Second by Pro Tem and Alderman Carroll. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you, and thank you for the good discussion. Item I, our manager's report.
Okay, so I just have one quick thing I'd like to give an update on the Taylor Field project. The pavilion and restroom materials that were set to arrive this week have been pushed back to the end of September. The construction company will be in the park on Monday, September 12th, changing out the dog park fence to allow for the mowers to enter. We just received our building permit with the floodplain corrections from the city today. The concrete for the trail, equipment bases, and restroom and pavilion areas will be poured on the same day, closer to when the restroom and the pavilion arrive at the end of September. These will be prefab units, so when they get there, they'll be ready to be set in place. That's really all I have for this evening.
Thank you, City Manager. Committee reports, Alderman Allen. Alderman Carroll. Alderman Alt.
Last month, the city manager and I had the honor of getting a tour of the Sunny Point to get familiar with that. I'm the liaison to Sunny Point. It was a very interesting tour, very informative. I got a better understanding of what they do, how they do shipping, how the safety procedures are there, and how they stress the safety all the time. And the fact that we have MOUs with them, with our fire department and our police department. And so that's the only thing I have, sir.
Thank you. I'm sure that was a fascinating tour. And we appreciate you serving on that liaison, and what a great group of men and women out there. Madam Alderman Lowe Davis.
Forestry Committee, it meets this coming Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I want to clarify something from the last meeting, from that report, which is in response to the very, very big limb on a big old live oak that was in front of that is still in front of the old jail. That big branch just suddenly fell. And it was determined that the reason for this was there was a certain kind of fungus, I think it's called white fungus inside. So the Forestry Committee had talked about, are there any ways to find out if trees have this, and explored some possibilities, looked at some tools. Nothing we know of that's available works. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Alderman Lombardi.
Yes, after a 2-month vacation from cleanup this Saturday, we will resume our cleanups. We meet at the old jail annex at 9 o'clock on Brett Street, so anybody feels like giving us a hand, we can appreciate that. I would also like to thank the city, Tom Stanley's crew, put the roof on our creation right here. We built a small storage shed, and we have another 2-3 hours, and Randy, you could move in.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Mosteller.
Thank you, Mayor. Gordon did much of my conversation about Parks and Rec Committee, but I've got a couple of things left. Work continues on the 2023-2028 Parks and Recreation and Open Space Master Plan. Our project consultant, Dr. Herstein, will be presenting the first draft of the updated master plan next Tuesday, September 13th, to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee at the regularly scheduled meeting at the Indian Trail Meeting Hall. The meeting is at 6:30 next Tuesday. Please come and listen to what he's proposing. With regard to the future kayak launch, which Eric King spoke of, the city is in the process of preparing the application for the CAMA Access Funding Grant, and part of the requirements to complete the grant application includes a public meeting. So please mark your calendars and plan to attend the public meeting Friday, September 16th at 10 a.m. at the Indian Trail Meeting Hall. Beside the library on West Moore. Again, that's next Friday, September 16th at 10 a.m. So please, we need citizen participation for that. Now, something fun. Plan to attend Captain Charlie's Kids Fishing Tournament on October 1st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the City Pier at the waterfront, at Waterfront Park. Registration is free, and this tournament is for ages 16 and under, but everybody else can watch the festivities, so please come. As a reminder, again, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board regular meeting is scheduled each month on the second Tuesday at 6:30 at the Indian Trail Meeting Hall, and as always, with everything, the public is invited. And then the only other thing, I just want to remind everybody that next week, Thursday at 6 o'clock, the Planning Board will be convening again here in the community building for their regularly scheduled meeting. So please come and participate in that.
Come for forestry, stay for parks.
That's right. A lot of meetings our citizens can attend. Very briefly, the ABC board will meet next week. And I talked to Beth Nichols of the ABC Commission today, and we're working on setting up our workshop, as I had described previously, with the ABC board and the Board of Aldermen. Hopefully the week of the 19th, but we'll pick a date where everyone can be present. Mayor's comments. The First Lady and I had the pleasure of being on City Dock this past Saturday, Labor Day. They had the Children's Crab Derby. I want to thank Director Heather Hemphill for her and her staff. That was a great event. It was a beautiful day. All these kids, grandchildren, just wonderful. So thank you for that. That was marvelous. I just wanted to say I was invited to speak at the Lions Club. They were a great group, and I enjoyed being there with them. They wanted an update on things with the city. I told them they were going great, and they agreed, and we all left happy that day. I want to thank the Historical Society in the city for the Art Newton 100th birth anniversary celebration. That was 3 days, 3 great events. I went to the Board of Education meeting this past week, and they gave the city a certificate for the money that we gave them, $10,000, and so it was good to be with that group. And they have a 3-minute public comment, and it's up on the board right in front of you. So we still have it made here in Southport. And again, the 9/11 ceremony, it will be Sunday at 9 a.m. We look forward to being there and hope that you can attend and remember that day in the way that you feel fit. Our staff reports are in your packet. Next item, item M, board comments. Alderman Allen,
I don't have any, thank you.
Alderman Carroll.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm pretty proud of this board tonight. The steps that we took to preserve our historic character and the overall look and aesthetics of Southport, big step in the right direction. In that same vein, I guess, there was a comment regarding after a few years, these three-story buildings will start to blend in. And I would encourage you to drive into the yacht basin and see how many multi-story buildings have blended in over the 10-plus years that they've been here. And then also to Randy and his team for this amazing audio visual equipment. This is awesome. I mean, like, really impressive. There's no camera. There's nobody. It's up there. So really excited to have this. And nobody's mic failed. We might have failed to use them properly, but they did not fail. Thank you.
Alderman Alt.
So all of you who drive down 9th Street at any particular time, especially 2 times during the day, you know that there's a traffic backlog there. And so the North Carolina Department of Transportation actually has a unit within that looks at schools and school traffic issues. They have sent the forms to the school. The principal has to be the person who moves it on. The principal has moved it on to the administration. They're supposed to be filling out the forms to do that. Once the NC DOT gets it back, it takes about 6 months to do the review, do the studies. They're going to work with the city, the police department, the fire department, everybody involved to have input into the whole thing. And then they're going to look at options to figure out what that traffic flow, what they may be able to do with the current right-of-ways along there. There's a picture out on the internet now. As of yesterday, the traffic is backed up around the curve. A van decides to go around the traffic, crossing the double yellow line, and is making the curve on the blind curve. If anybody with a load of kids came the other way, it would have been a disaster right there. So that's in the works. They're also going to throw in a study to say, what happens if you build 500 homes? What happens if you build 1,000 homes? What happens if you build 1,500 homes? And it connects into Indigo Plantation Road. Imagine that. And what that might also look like in those different gradients. And then if the city wanted to change those numbers for 250 increments, they could do that. But that was what they had decided today to look at. I wanted to pass that along, that's all good stuff. So sometime in the relatively near future, that's the plan. They'll get a plan, not a fix. Fixes cost money. Fixes have to be budgeted and all of that, but it's moving forward.
Thank you, Alderman Alt. Alderman Lowe Davis.
Very briefly, the city attorney just said to me, boy, you all got a lot done tonight. Yes, we did. And I thank the members of the board for hard work. Thank the planning board for hard work on recommending the changes to the CBD and the BD. This prevents us from being overtaken by events now. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lombardi.
No comment, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mosteller.
Thank you, Mayor. Not long ago, I had a citizen remind me that there are only 2 types of changes in this world, planned and unplanned. And he shared a quote from Abraham Lincoln that said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So much of our discussion this evening centered on the future of our community. A lighting ordinance to be more responsible to our neighbors and our environment, the creation of a local historic commission to help preserve much of what we love about our town, updates to the UDO to again help maintain the character of our community. I am grateful to be a part of this community. I believe that if we will preserve our character, the whole business conversation 50 years from now We will be economically viable because there will be nothing else like us. And so we guarantee our future by preserving that which makes us special.
Thank you. It was an excellent meeting tonight, and for those of you who stayed the 2.5 hours, God bless you for that. I know it seems longer, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Arts in the Park is back this September 18th. It's a Sunday at 2 o'clock. All children are invited. There's a beautiful art project going on, a story, and all children are invited. The number doesn't matter. Supplies, it's free. So that's September 18th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the park, Franklin Square Park. Okay, I just passed that along to all the kids you know and the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, so excellent meeting. We moved the city forward. We move in the best way forward. And change is going to come to Southport. We try to mitigate it the best way possible. Development is going to come. We try to guide it in the right direction. And we move forward. We're blessed to be here. So stay positive. Keep in touch. Contact your alderman. Contact me. We're here to serve. And again, I would like to also say this is an incredible microphone. I mean, maybe people won't say online that they can't hear me anymore. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn. A second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, board.